Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your guided tour through the worlds of Disney and Imagineering. I'm Matthew Krull, your host on this panoramic journey, and I'm on a mission to better understand the stories and places we love and the people who bring them to life. Last week, I shared a very special podcast interview with Dave Crawford, creative ride engineering executive for Walt Disney Imagineering, recorded live from Walt Disney Imagineering headquarters in Glendale, California, thanks to a special invitation from the team at Walt Disney Imagineering and Disney Parks. Be sure to listen to this episode if you haven't done so already, as Dave has some fascinating insights to share about his Disney career, which began in 1998. While the beginning of that episode included a summary of my day at Imagineering, I felt that there was still a lot left to be shared, so this episode includes more information about what I saw, what I experienced, and what I learned at 1401 Flower Street in a little more of an off-the-cuff conversational style, as if we were going out to lunch after this event to share more about what I saw and how I felt on that day. As you fasten your seatbelt, I encourage you to take out your mobile devices and search for Imagination Skyway on your favorite social media app. Better yet, if you're looking for ad-free episodes, bonus content, or the ability to comment directly on the podcast, head to patreon.com/imagination-skyway, where you can sign up for a free account or a premium subscription. And if this episode leaves you yearning for a trip to Disney or any other destination, reach out to our partners and sponsors at KMV Travel by visiting kmvtravel.com/skyway. As we begin our journey, please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your journey aboard Imagination Skyway. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, there was a previous podcast episode I published last week all about my interview with Dave Crawford at Walt Disney Imagineering, and the beginning of that episode dedicated about 10 minutes to sharing a very inspirational, emotional take for my day. It was a script that I had written literally at the end of my Disneyland adventure, which was 5 days at the Disneyland Resort, 1 day at Walt Disney Imagineering, 1 day at Disneyland to attend the media preview for Walt Disney A Magical Life, and an additional 2 days of fun at the Disneyland Resort, capturing content and getting as much recorded as possible for this show. And I had written this literally 5-page script at the very end of the last day. We had wrapped up all the content that we needed to get, and I went back to my room at the Disneyland Hotel, put on some inspirational music in my noise-canceling headphones, and just was writing and writing and writing, and just pouring out my thoughts. I edited it the next day, and then got to recording when I got home. And the thing with a 5-page script like that is it's obviously very carefully worded and all very honest and intentional. I used, I wanted to convey as best as I could the feelings that I felt, and I didn't want to miss a single thing. But in writing that script, I realized that I had missed a lot of details that I'm sure a lot of you would be interested in hearing. And these were stories that I shared with my family and with my friends, and it's a discussion that I also want to have with you, because I'm sure most of you listening are curious what it's like inside Walt Disney Imagineering. And while that previous episode did share some highlights from each experience that we got to see and literally in some cases play with and learn, I thought it'd be really interesting to go sort of scene by scene on my day and on this incredible tour. And thanks again to Walt Disney Imagineering for inviting me on this tour. I got to regroup with some friends, Lou Mongello from WDW Radio, Serena from Living by Disney, Nate from Paging Mr. Morrow, or he is Paging Mr. Morrow, and Jack from DSNY Newscast. It was great to connect with them, to get to see them again, and to share in this experience with them. So I arrived early in the morning. I actually left Disneyland well ahead of time, and I'm someone who believes you are on time if you're early, you are late if you're on time. So I planned to arrive at the campus 15 minutes early, and I baked in an additional 30 minutes of time beyond what the traffic was expecting it to take. And so I got to Glendale very early, grabbed a coffee, and then headed over to the Imagineering campus. And as you might imagine, this is not like going to a Disney park. You're not greeted with a large marquee and music and all this design that's, this really crafted design to sort of like draw attention to the entrance. There's no, Walt Disney coins the term weenie, that beacon that gets you to, that attracts you to visually look at something. So that could be Cinderella Castle down Main Street, USA, or Spaceship Earth at the entrance of Epcot, or the train station at the front of Disneyland Park. But this doesn't have that type of appearance. It's a little bit secluded. It's kind of off the beaten path, but once you do arrive, very clearly displayed at the top are the words Walt Disney Imagineering at 1401 Flower Street. And what was great about this experience was the Imagineers had just completed this renovation of the main headquarters. And the first thing I noticed was I had seen previous photos of Imagineers walking into 1401 Flower Street, and they pull back the door and walk inside. But they upgraded the doors to automatic doors. And when I walked inside, that was very fitting because the entrance feels a lot like, in some ways, this is sort of my personal analogy, but it feels a bit like Disney's Contemporary Resort. If you've walked inside, it's got these colorful murals, this contemporary floor carpet, and a lot of artwork to display. There's, for instance, at the top of the stairwell, as you walk into your left, there's this It's a Small World Tower of the Four Winds. If you're familiar with my episode with Broly Crump, he talked about Tower of the Four Winds, and it's this mural sort of depicting the Tower of the Four Winds with a Mary Blair style of these colors that pop, and it's really intricate artwork. You could stare at that mural. It's very small relative to some of the other murals on display, but it already tells you what this experience is going to be like. And I'm imagining, and the whole time I was walking through this campus, I was imagining what it must be like for the Imagineers to walk onto this campus and the inspiration that they get walking through those doors, walking past the security guard, and like any other opportunity I've had at Disney to go backstage. I have shared that I am a former cast member, so I've worked backstage before. I worked at Disney's Animal Kingdom, so I went backstage every single day to get into the park and to leave at the end of the day. I also worked at Disney Vacation Club, so I got to go to the Disney Vacation Club headquarters in Celebration, Florida every single day for work. Talk about a dream come true. And, I got that same vibe walking into here, but tenfold. That really friendly greeting by the greeter security guard at the front who checked us all in. Again, those colorful murals, the music, the gentle Disney style music that's playing as you're welcomed inside. And they really wanted to roll out the red carpet for us. So our tour began with an introduction to Walt Disney Imagineering. We got a really exciting sizzle reel. It's something that you would, and they played on this monitor in the lobby. And it got us excited. It gave us a taste and overview of all of the incredible creations that Walt Disney Imagineering has designed and built, since the early 50s when Walt Disney started WED Enterprises. And while this building was not always here, that came about a decade later, it is a place that the Imagineers have worked for the last 60 years or so. And this is a place where, Imagineers Mark Davis and Alice Davis and Harriet Burns and Rolly Crump and Bob Gurr and Mary Blair and all these iconic classic Imagineers you know and love walked through these halls. They were in this building. They worked on these creations. Walt walked through this building and was tinkering with what the Imagineers had or what they were designing. And much like he describes in one of his interviews, where he addresses a child who asks what he does, because he doesn't draw Mickey Mouse anymore. He doesn't write the gags or the reels, but he is a little bit like a bee, buzzing from one building or one department to the other, inspiring everybody, invigorating everybody to continue their work. So I just want to mention that everything here, from start to finish, especially at the headquarters, this newly redesigned headquarters, is carefully constructed to inspire the Imagineers. And it's designed by the Imagineers. And it's very playful. It's very as I said, that vibe I got walking into the front entrance was contemporary. And then getting to see that sizzle reel displaying what the Imagineers work on. And while that's not necessarily there's something to be playing every single day on repeat, it's something that someone who's visiting the campus could get an overview of what the Walt Disney Imagineers have done and what their legacy has been and where it's going to continue to go from here. Right beyond that is a display of the countless Themed Entertainment Association awards that Walt Disney Imagineering has won over the decades. And you see some familiar ones right from the start. So there's like Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, and that's next to Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which is next to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is right next to Nemo and Friends Sea Rider. That's next to Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. Lots of things at Disneyland. You see just a ton of awards and accolades. Avatar Flight of Passage, the Bistro Chez Remy at Walt Disney Studios Park, or soon to be Disney Adventure World. And you realize the impact that Disney has had not just on the Disney parks directly, but on themed entertainment. And it reminds you of the innovation that happens within these halls. And from there, our tour really kicked off, and we rounded a corner. And I shared this on Instagram if you're curious to go and check it out. You walk through this monorail hallway. And again, I got very strong contemporary resort vibes with a magical dash of extra Imagineering, because as you walk through this monorail hallway, you hear Disney music, this instrumental version of Disney music. It reminds me of the resort music loop you might hear on your in-room TV as you're turning to the Walt Disney World Today channel that tells you the park hours and the special events happening and what you can expect for the weather. And as you're watching that channel, you hear this really whimsical, lighthearted, upbeat, instrumental version of your favorite Disney songs, whether Disney parks or Disney films. And you get that same music loop as you're walking through this monorail hallway, which was really incredible to see. And as you're listening to it, you see the monorail windows digitally displaying this artwork of the Disney parks. And in some cases, it looks like you're moving. It looks like you're traveling past the Haunted Mansion or the Mark Twain Riverboat or past World Showcase in Epcot or past Radiator Springs Racers in Cars Land. And it again gives you this, as you're picturing the walking in the footsteps of an Imagineer, you walk into this campus and you're reminded of where the company has come from, some of the attractions that guests are currently enjoying today. Even the Dapper Dans make an appearance on the screen. Some of the cast members and live performers make an appearance on the screen. And it changes from scene to scene. It's not always displaying the park. Sometimes it's displaying these Walt Disney Imagineering gears, the Walt Disney Imagineering logo. They have these really, even the ceiling, to be honest, the way that the lights are organized, it reminds you of the top of a monorail car if you're riding the Walt Disney World monorail or the Disneyland monorail. And at the very front, I'll add that, you sort of start in the back of the monorail car, and then you walk all the way to the front of the monorail car. And at the front of the monorail car, you will see pictures of Walt Disney riding or piloting the monorail. So that reminds you of the man who started it all. And the legacy continues beyond the monorail hallway. You round this corner, you see a photo of Sorcerer Mickey, or not even a photo, I should say, a cardboard a three-dimensional cutout against this really beautiful blue wall, reminiscent of Sorcerer Mickey. He's got stars coming out of his hands, and next to that is a quote from Walt Disney: "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." And that again reminds the Imagineers as they're walking in of what they're going to be doing that day. They're going to be inventing the future. They're going to be doing the impossible. On the opposing wall is one of the most iconic Imagineers of all time, and considered to be Walt Disney's right-hand man, John Hench. There's an entire wall dedicated to the legacy of John Hench. You see some of his artwork. It's the John Hench Gallery. So you see a photo of the wishing well, the Snow White wishing well at Disneyland. You see a photo of Mickey Mouse overlooking Epcot's World Showcase. You see a photo of the monorail. You see a photo of or artwork of the original version of Epcot, the City of Tomorrow, the experimental prototype City of Tomorrow. And it's got this photo of John Hench looking at or working at his desk. And at the very top is one of my favorites. You see his iconic sketch of Space Mountain, the original first sketch of Space Mountain. It looks a little bit different than the final version, but it's something I have John Hench's book, Designing Disney, and that's there. The artwork is there in that book, and it hasn't, although the specifics have changed, it still has that cone shape that Space Mountain has. On the opposite wall, you know how much I love sound and music, you have the composers behind the magic. So you see, John Williams is there. You see Jerry Goldsmith, who worked on the score for Mulan and also the original soundtrack for Soarin' over California. James Horner is there. He worked not only on Avatar, but also inspired the music for Pandora, the world of Avatar. See Exitencio. You see Alan Menken, of course. So you get all of these iconic composers. So if you're walking into the music department that day, you're going to get a inspirational look at the composers who you're following in the footsteps of, which is great. And I'll read this for you. This is a quote that's on the wall. I did capture this in a photo. Walt Disney Imagineering, our story so far. Since 1952, the storytellers and magic makers at Walt Disney Imagineering have dreamed up, designed, and created countless themed entertainment experiences at Disney destinations around the globe. Our specialized teams ideate and design all Disney theme parks, resorts, attractions, live entertainment experiences, and spectaculars, cruise ships, and real estate developments worldwide. Over the decades, we went from a tiny collective of hand-picked artists to our current global design team. Walt Disney Imagineering is the only think tank created by Walt Disney himself, representing hundreds of unique skills from artists to architects, scientists to show producers, project managers to programmers, model makers to mathematicians, and so much more. Regardless of what our role is, we share one thing in common. We are all storytellers, collaboratively using our talents and expertise to create the most magical places and experiences on the planet. You are standing at the entrance to Graffiti Hallway, a space that has been lovingly tagged by Imagineers since 1991. We are proud to continue our history of spontaneous, exuberant artistry, and on the west side of Graffiti Hallway, we invite you to journey through our timeline, highlighting each major project we have designed and the milestones, innovations, and memories within them. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Generations of dreamers and doers have walked these hallways, and the conversations had, connections made, and visions formed here today will serve as the inspirational history for Imagineers of the future. That legacy continues through Graffiti Hallway, where you do get that timeline that they describe in that introduction, starting with Wet Enterprises in Burbank, California in 1952. And there's this what was really inspiring is you get, it wasn't the original, but a copy of the Herb Ryman sketch of Disneyland, the original one that Herb and Walt spent a weekend developing to showcase as their design for inspiration for Disneyland. Of course, Disneyland doesn't look exactly like this photo, but you can probably find it online. It does exist, and it does showcase some of the things that did end up coming to life. There is an iconic castle. There is a railroad around the park. The Frontierland riverboat, the Mark Twain, is there. You get a little bit of a piece of Adventureland that's there as well, Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. They're not in the exact same placements, but they are nonetheless, those lands did come to exist. And then each wall beyond that depicts the parks in order of their creation, and they include some of the photos of the attractions, a timeline, so even the Disneyland in Anaheim, California, its opening date, and then some of the timeline for what came to be at Disneyland, and then you move on to Magic Kingdom and, Bay Lake, Florida in 1971. You have photos, you have descriptions, you have quotes on the wall. Even the Magic Kingdom one says, paging Mr. Morrow, Mr. Tom Morrow. Moves on to Epcot. It moves on to every single park that they have developed. Across the way is this really beautiful sketch, or I shouldn't even call it a sketch, it's artwork, of Sleeping Beauty Castle. It's very colorful. It's nighttime. There are fireworks. You see guests walking into Cinderella Castle. And on the wall is written, "For Marty." Of course, that being for Marty Sklar. And on the opposite ends, way at the end, as you get past the most recent park, which is Shanghai Disneyland, there is a blank wall with the date 2025, right? It ends in 2025. It's literally a timeline at the bottom. It goes all the way to 2025. And it has a Marty Sklar quote that says, "Life is like a blank sheet of paper. You never know what it can be till you put something on it." Now, a lot of you listening, if you're fans of Imagineering, probably have always wanted to visit the model shop. And I hate to say it, I know I'll make you maybe a little bit jealous, but I did get to visit the model shop. And while it's not like the same experience Walt Disney had in some of his World of Color or Disneyland TV episodes where he bumps into Blaine Gibson and Harriet Burns and Mark Davis and asks them to explain the models for Pirates of the Caribbean or walks us through It's a Small World or Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress. We did get a small glimpse of the model shop. And in particular, we got to actually look at the physical 1/25th scale model of the new Lion King attraction coming to Disney Adventure World at the Disneyland Paris Resort. If you're not familiar with it, it is a water ride in a very similar style to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Some of the features of the mountain look familiar if you're a fan of that attraction. And we got to see this actual working model of this new Lion King attraction that is being designed. And it gave us a really closer look. It was not behind glass. They asked us to get close to it and take a look at it. We were able to get down to the level of what guests' point of view, what they're going to see. We got to look at the trees that were placed, the rock work, the vehicle concepts, the track layout for the outdoor portion. And all this is still a working model, so not necessarily what the final version is going to be. They'll probably tweak a couple things here and there, but it gave us a much closer look at how models help Imagineers picture what attractions are going to be like in real dimensions. So we were able to walk around, not all four sides, but two, I'd say 2.5 of the sides of the attraction, and get a really good look at this. And it shows you how they're able to, almost like any other model you might have, a working model you would have in your house, something you would build, even like a Lego set, right? You're able to really see all those details and add things and move things around. It's what they can pitch to folks like Bob Iger and Josh D'Amaro and give them updates on what this attraction is going to be like. It's a way that they can invite Imagineers working on various versions of the attraction into this room to take a look at it, to maybe offer suggestions for things that could be tweaked. And it shows the importance of working beyond computers, which we've got plenty of insights into how the technology helps take that model building a step further. It gives them an ability to visualize things and touch things and look at things in a different way that even VR is not able to properly convey in the same exact way, at least not with our current technology. So it's an important way for the Imagineers to develop these attractions. And then they gave us a look at some final versions of attractions that you might know and love. We got to look at the exterior for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, the exterior for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at the Disneyland Resort, including some of the courtyard work out front. Look at the World of Frozen at Tokyo Disney Resort, and a few of the vehicles you know and love. My favorite was getting to see, once again, I saw this at Destination D23 a few years ago, but the Star Jumper for Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. And then from there, we went into sculpting. And this was a room that included a tribute to Blaine Gibson. We saw a lot of sculpted figures from various attractions you know and love. Attractions like the Hall of Presidents, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, the Great Movie Ride. We saw a sculpture of the fountain outside Remy's Ratatouille Adventure in Epcot. We got to see a model of one of the audio animatronic figures, just the beginning of our animatronic adventure though. And we got a closer look at the sculptures for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that appeared in Disneyland. And I don't, to be honest, remember the timeline for it, but it was a much older version of, I'm pretty sure, the Snow White wishing well. I could be mistaken about that, from Disneyland Park. So it was really interesting to get to walk in there and to see that dedication to Blaine Gibson and to focus on a specific discipline at Walt Disney Imagineering, one, of course, of many. Now, from there, things got even more exciting, if they could get even more exciting, but something that really excited me as a podcaster, we walked into this room, and it was a quiet room. And I say that not to mean that it was, everyone was quiet in there, but it was an audio room. It was a sound room. It was a professional sound studio, something that as a podcaster was an incredible experience. It made me very envious of the technology they have at their disposal. Of course, my budget is not anywhere close to Walt Disney Imagineering's budget as a solo podcaster doing this as a hobby, but they had some incredible equipment there. And we got an incredible demonstration, one of my favorite demonstrations from Greg Lotka, who described the work that these audio engineers complete to create. He said that this one room or this one team mixes all of the audio you hear. So, any Disney park around the world, it's a small team that is mixing and fine-tuning the audio for attraction soundtracks, background area music, cue music loops, nighttime spectaculars, anything that sounds at any Disney park around the world, at any Disney resort or hotel location around the world, on any Disney Cruise Line ship around the world. They are the ones who mix and engineer it all. And he gave us a demonstration, and he let us take a look at the monitors and how this all worked. For this, I can't even call it 3D. It's kind of a 4D audio technology called wave field synthesis. And we stood in the middle of this room, which we were kind of up on this platform. We had to walk downstairs to get into the room, and then upstairs to get to this production platform. And surrounding us in this quiet room were 70 speakers lining the wall, all in a row, 360 degrees. He also pointed above us. There were 5 speakers on the ceiling, and then 9 speakers at an angled down at us, sort of equidistant around the room. And he explained that those 9 speakers were used to create the audio for Circle Vision. You might remember that there were 9 screens and therefore also 9 speakers for those 9 screens. And that was the set of speakers that is used and has been used in the past to engineer the sound for Circle Vision, which was incredibly cool to experience because I love Circle Vision films. I do miss a lot of them. I'm glad we still have Canada Far and Wide and Reflections of China over at Epcot, but otherwise not many Circle Vision films left, especially at my local park, Walt Disney World. And he explained how wave field synthesis enables the audio to come from not a specific speaker, but from a specific spot in the room. And it's very hard to describe unless you've experienced it. So I didn't even capture video of this because I knew that video was not going to capture it correctly or do it any justice. So I want you to picture yourself in a room with 70 speakers in a line around the perimeter of the room. And instead of hearing the sound from a particular speaker, because in traditional sense, you would hear it sort of moving around from speaker to speaker. And he did explain how that was, for instance, the original technology used for the Haunted Mansion. The speakers were in the gargoyles, in the stretching room, and you would hear the sound move, the ghost host therefore move from one gargoyle to the next. But with the current technology, I don't understand the physics behind it, but I do understand that there is physics behind it and engineering behind it. The speakers are able to coordinate in such a way that the sound is emitted from, or sounds like it's coming from, a specific spot in the room. And he had to stand on an X, and he demonstrated using the ghost host narration from the stretching room how the ghost host was physically, it felt as if, it sounded as if he was literally traveling around the room. This ghost, this voice moving around the room as if it was this ghostly figure. It was this ghost host who was actually moving around the room. And this is the current technology used at the Haunted Mansion in Magic Kingdom and at Avatar Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Those were two examples that he shared. But it does make it sound like, the ghost host could be whispering right next to your ear. It is the coolest thing from an audio perspective. It was one of my favorite experiences of that day. And it was just so great to get to be in that room. And then you all know that later, if you listen to that last episode, I got the chance to go back into that room, that same exact room, and record my interview with Dave Crawford, the ride engineering executive for Walt Disney Imagineering, who's worked on so many attractions at every Disney park around the world. If you haven't listened to that interview, make sure to go back and check it out, because he is a wealth of knowledge. He's sharp and he knows his stuff, and he has a really entertaining way of explaining how he goes about his work and how that team creates these ride systems that you know and love today. How his first one was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and I love that he got to work on that with, of course, Robert Coltrane, who I interviewed on the show when he was nominated to, or he became a Disney legend just a couple of years ago. So that was a really great experience. And then from there, we journeyed over to the animation department. And I know some of you might be thinking, animation, is that over at the are they the ones that design the films? They're not. Animation and Walt Disney Imagineering are the engineers and artists who design the audio animatronics figures. And we began with a demonstration of how audio animatronics technology has developed over the years. We did see one of the tiki birds. We actually saw Zazu from Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room under new management. That was at Magic Kingdom for the early 2000s. I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. And we saw the evolution, and they walked us through the demonstration of the evolution of audio animatronics figures from its first iteration all the way to the A1000s, which are the figures we know today, and how it's gone from hydraulics to electronics, how the pieces have been advanced in such a way that they can create such fine movements under the skin that you can physically see through the audio animatronics figures. Movements in the face, movements in the, even the Na'vi, the Shaman of Songs over at Na'vi River Journey, they explain, has 42 individual points of motion in the face. Think about that. 42 points of motion in the face. All of the, and just thinking about how that means that, like, the ears can move in such a way, or the eyebrows, or the jaw, like all of this really intricate detail on those A1000 figures. And that gets me so excited for what they're going to be able to do in the future. Of course, the A1000 technology was also used for Walt Disney and Magical Life, the new audio animatronic figure there of Walt Disney himself. So this gave me a really deeper appreciation. And I mentioned this in the Walt Disney Magical Life podcast episode, but it makes you understand all the mechanics that go into the head, because we got to take a closer look at it, and how far they've come, how advanced the audio animatronic figures are today, and what they're going to be able to do with this from here. Just thinking about all the innovations happening right now in technology in general and the tools at their disposal. This is a renaissance period for Disney and for themed entertainment. And they're going to be able to accomplish so much. I can't wait to see what audio animatronics figures are next. But we did get a look at that design process for the audio animatronics figures, and we got to physically play with them. And not, of course, the real audio animatronics, but we got a closer look at how the audio animatronics figures work and sort of the mechanics behind those electronic parts using physical props, so using sort of more practical effects. But we got to play with Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and Lieutenant Beck from Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. And then they also explained the casing that goes around the audio animatronics figures, and that includes primarily they use this this synthetic material that we got to play with. So we got to actually feel what the Davy Jones animatronic feels like from using all these little parts from the Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure attraction over at Shanghai Disney Resort, and the hand for one of the animatronics for the Hall of Presidents. That's sort of that material that's used there, and it does look, especially the Davy Jones one, a more modern animatronic, looks really convincing up close, and the craftsmanship in animation is extraordinary. We really felt literally and symbolically felt the impact that the Imagineers have had, and the developments of audio animatronics figures And it just built my appreciation even more so for audio animatronics. And again, I'm really looking forward to what's to come in the future. It really shows you a lot of the work that they're developing. So I just wanted to share some of those highlights from the audio animatronic or animation department. From there, we went to a really exciting department. Not that any of the others aren't, but we went to research and development. And again, we got a sizzle reel of what they're working on in R&D. We saw some creations that are from familiar attractions and ones that were like, ooh, we haven't seen that before. Like what is that going to be used for? Like I think some of you have seen, I think they share this in D23, but this sort of flying hang glider. So we got another look of that in the sizzle reel. We saw the Doctor Strange lighting technology used for that experience, that show over at Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure. Saw some of the walk around droids and BDX droids, the Spider-Man Stuntronic, so that got us excited. And then we went to actually see the holotile floor that was really publicized a lot last year when Lanny Smoot got inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. I was so grateful to have the opportunity to interview him and now get to see him in person demonstrating the holotile floor. And it has even this sound to it that you cannot see or experience unless you're physically there. There's the sound of the holotile floor was very visceral, and we got to see all the implications for this, or a lot of the implications for it. So he walked around using VR technology and showed us what he was looking at Disneyland Park on the holotile floor. And what you got to remember about this is a relatively finite amount of space. It's if I don't know the exact square footage of it, but essentially it's like 5 feet by 5 feet, somewhere in that vicinity. And get on this 5 foot by 5 foot floor, the holotiles will keep you on that floor. So you're walking, but it's keeping you in place, much like a treadmill. And as you change directions, it keeps you still in place, and it adjusts to your speed. It adjusts to your direction. So you can literally walk anywhere. You can walk for miles and not leave that 5 foot by 5 foot space. It uses LiDAR technology. That's what Lanny explained to us. And still an incredible piece of technology. So in addition to being able to physically walk around Disneyland or any other, Lanny said that the Imagineers can design an attraction and then they can go and ride it or walk through it using the holotile floor. Also has gaming implications for picturing this could, in the maybe not so far future, maybe in the near future, be in your home. So you could wear a piece of VR technology and walk through a game. It just has so many incredible implications to it, and it was wonderful to get the chance to see Lanny demonstrate this for us. After we saw that, nearby, you might have seen this on my Instagram or my Facebook page. It's one of the most viral posts I have recently. We got the chance to see the fully retractable lightsaber that some of you might recognize if you didn't get to see it in person. Perhaps you saw it in videos from that Rey used from Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. And we got to play with it. So we actually got to activate the lightsaber and watch it fully expand and light up and hear the sound of the lightsaber with this. It had this deep bass to it, and it just felt like, this is a physical prop. It's not a real lightsaber, but you feel like it's a lightsaber. It's even more of an experience than Savi's workshop holding that lightsaber for the first time, which I had a connection to that lightsaber from the first time I held it. I felt that connection when I held this lightsaber too. And I can imagine it being, and this was not with like a story around it. This was just getting to play with the prop. So imagine it in a story, the experience would feel even more incredible. And I'll address right now, because I know that a few, not that I like to address every social media comment because there's always a lot of them, but one in particular that popped up a lot was the fact that this must be a flimsy piece of technology because look at all these creators, podcasters, vloggers holding it so delicately. It must be about to fall apart. I need to reframe that a little bit just so you understand this. We were not holding it delicately because it was flimsy. Quite the opposite. We were holding it delicately because, first of all, it actually had some weight to it. And second of all, the main reason is we don't want to break it. Like, they actually trusted us to hold this piece of technology. And could you imagine dropping it? Could you imagine, playing with it and it falls on the floor and somehow breaks, right? None of us wanted to do that. And I have nothing but my word to share with you. But if you trust me enough, if you've been listening to the show, this is episode 227. Up until this point, I've remained honest about everything. And I hope, although I always have a little bit of a, I always look on the bright side of things, I am always honest about my experiences. So if you take my word for it, I can tell you, this is not a flimsy piece of technology. This is absolutely a sturdy piece of technology, and we were holding it because we did not want to break. We're holding it delicately because we did not want to break it. But thanks to the Imagineers for trusting us to actually hold and activate and deactivate this amazing lightsaber. I can't wait to see what the implications are. They did not share what the implications are beyond what we have seen so far, but I am sure that we will probably see this again at some point in the future. After that, we walked over to another part of the R&D department, more the office space, and we got to learn and see another sort of sizzle reel of the Stuntronic animatronic, which is the one that's currently used for Avengers Campus. That's the Spider-Man one that sort of flies in the air. We got to see a few prototypes of it in its different iterations up close. So from like the first model all the way up to the most recent prototype. And we got to see in this sizzle reel all those iterations iterating and improving to get to what we ended with, the final Spider-Man Stuntronic in action at Avengers Campus. And it gives you an appreciation for the process that happens at Walt Disney Imagineering to continue to, you start with something small, that blank sheet of paper, as Marty Sklar would say, and you innovate and iterate and improve and improve and improve and go from one test to the next, to the next, to the next. And eventually, after hundreds, I'm sure, of attempts, you finally get to that final design. And then even that is just the baseline for your next creation. And then we got a demonstration of the BDX droids at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And these are also the same BDX droids that are going to appear in the Mandalorian and Grogu film that's coming out next year. And we got to see them up close. They're so cute. They're so believable. Like, I'm watching the Imagineers pilot them with this remote, but you still feel like they're talking to you. They're looking at you. I almost questioned at a certain point, like, are they actually just walking them to a certain point and then the BDX droids are interacting themselves? It was very convincing that these were real autonomous droids. And when you don't see the Imagineer piloting it, when you just see them roaming around Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you absolutely get that impression. And then they trusted us again. Thank you to Disney for trusting us, for the Imagineers for trusting us. But we got to play with these BDX droids. It was not easy. I think I was ashamed that it took me a long time to actually figure it out. And candidly, I haven't played video games in a long time, but the 18-year-old self of me was ashamed for how long it took me to operate a simple joystick. But I was still able to. I did eventually figure it out. I'm a quick learner. And, we got to play with this console. We got to physically walk the BDX droids around this space. We got to see their different character iterations. So they have all these different programmed animations that they exhibit. And so you might see them go through a sequence that shows that they're sad, or that they're excited, or that they're angry, or that they're happy. Or that they're calm, or dancing. So we got to play with all those different pre-programmed motions. And if you are someone who is interested in coding or robotics, like, this is a dream place to work. So I gotta say, like, if you get the chance to see these droids up close and play with them, that would be incredible. And then from there, we went to the green spaces. And here we had lunch. I had the chance to walk around the 1401 Flower Street courtyard, where they have benches, fountains. They have a couple places to order food. You could sit inside or outside. And again, like, a lot of relics of the past. So they had one of the benches, the popsicle benches from A Bug's Land. They had the Heimlich's choo-choo train, the actual Heimlich, the front car, Heimlich's choo-choo train. I got to sit in it from A Bug's Land. Of course, that's no longer there. A sky bucket from that classic Disneyland attraction. A people mover car from Disneyland. I'm sure a lot of you Disneyland locals are still missing the people mover. And so I got to actually, see that people mover car up close. And then I love that they had a sign in the center of the courtyard that showed you how far it is to every single Disney destination or several Disney destinations around the world. So one way it said 32 miles to Disneyland, or also in that similar direction, 5,470 miles to Tokyo Disneyland, or in the opposite direction, 2,193 miles to Walt Disney World. And you have Disneyland Paris, Castaway Cay, Hong Kong Disneyland, Aulani, Shanghai Disneyland. So you get to see all of these, it's pointing in the direction of those locations and how far they are, which is super cool to see. And then I had the opportunity, as I mentioned, to chat with Dave Crawford at Walt Disney Imagineering. He was incredible to meet. I was so grateful to have even 15 minutes of his time to ask him questions. That 15-minute interview felt like an hour because it was filled with so much information. Dave answered these questions so sharply and with such insight in such a succinct manner that you got so much information, or I got so much information in that 15 minutes. So again, definitely check it out. It was one of the best experiences I've had as a podcaster to date. Let's be honest, it's the best experience I've had at a podcast as a podcaster to date. Who am I kidding? But I shared this, in a very poetic way in that podcast episode. I want to reiterate it here. As I was reflecting, I had a lot of time. I had a couple hours at that point between eating lunch, chatting with Jack and Lou and Serena and Nate, cast members that were there with us, Imagineers that were there with us. I had this chance to reflect on the Imagineering team and Disney and where Disney is today, and on the role that social media plays. I talk about this stuff all the time, but it just validated everything I've been saying for the last 8 years, and it continues to this day. So a few things I want to share. First of all, this is an incredibly talented team of people. You walk in through this campus, you see the different departments, you chat with the Imagineers. They are individually a wealth of knowledge. They are craftsmen, they are engineers, they're scientists. They are, I've had the opportunity to chat with so many of them virtually, but then also now in person. They know their stuff. They are innovators. They are leaders in their respective disciplines. Disney has top talent working at Imagineering. And many of them, if not all of them, are fans of Disney. A lot of them have admiration for the Imagineers who came before them, are themselves, much like you, grew up loving Disney, going to Disney, and dreaming one day of being an Imagineer. And then they arrive at this campus, they do this work, they collaborate together, they brainstorm together. I said before that I felt like Walt could have just turned the corner at any moment. And I still feel that. I wrote those words over a week ago. I still feel that thinking back on it. And it was that continued. And the reason why I felt that way, and I think this will, I hope, bring a lot of optimism and reassurance to a lot of you listening. There is this continued heritage that has been passed down from one generation of Imagineers to the next. They've expanded upon that heritage and that vision, as they should, as Walt's always wanted, and that's what keeps the company relevant and moving forward and staying a leader in themed entertainment. And even, inventing things that go beyond themed entertainment. But that shared thread, that devotion to storytelling, that desire to innovate and improve and plus beyond what they have currently developed, and that commitment to creating something that it may not be perfect, but it is going to be the best product they can possibly put out there. They are all committed to this. They all care deeply. They all have an affinity for, if not Disney as a brand, they certainly have an affinity for their work. And and an appreciation for what they are doing, a devotion to storytelling, first and foremost, and in between and at the end. Storytelling weaves through every part of this process. And because of that, that all originated with Walt Disney and continues today. And so that same spirit, the way that it embodies itself in process and visually shows itself through people working at Imagineering is why I felt like Walt could have turned the corner, because his legacy has been passed on from generation to generation. And the current Imagineers are still activating on and honoring that legacy that Walt started and taking it to the next level. So that is still there. And these people, these talented individuals, are committed to creating incredible attractions and delivering entertaining experiences for families around the globe. And I do believe these are the best people for the job. I think that these individuals, these teams, are doing remarkable work, and they are absolutely doing whatever they can to deliver for the fans. I think they listen a whole lot to fans and listen a whole lot to those who experience the attractions themselves. They come back with a ton of feedback, and they find ways to improve upon what they've done before and to, as Walt would say, keep moving forward. And so it was an honor to get the chance to see this in person. It left me deeply optimistic about the present state of Disney, the future state of Disney, and it really showed me why I still continue to love Disney to this day. The new attractions, the classic attractions, everything in between. It all is this devotion to storytelling and using technology and creating the future, that they are just doing this incredible job. And I want to applaud the Imagineers who I got the chance to meet, the ones who I didn't get to meet who might be listening, and to say thank you to Disney Parks and Walt Disney Imagineering again for giving me the opportunity of a lifetime. I said it last time, I'll say it again. I felt like I'd won a golden ticket. And even if this is the only experience I get to walk through Walt Disney Imagineering, I'm incredibly grateful. And it is a day I will always remember, never forget. But again, I just want to share my thoughts, and I want to hear your thoughts. So reach out to me, send me a message, respond to some of my videos you might see on social media. If you're listening on Patreon, comment directly below in this episode. Let me know what you think of this tour, what your thoughts are about Walt Disney Imagineering, and perhaps what questions you might have that I might be able to answer for you. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this experience took you inside Walt Disney Imagineering and made it feel like you were right there with me at 1401 Flower Street. Welcome back to Imagination Central. Before you exit this episode, remember to follow Imagination Skyway on social media and share the show with anyone who might enjoy listening to our program. For ad-free episodes and bonus content, create a free account or sign up for a premium subscription at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. When you're ready for your next vacation, remember that listeners of Imagination Skyway can get rewarded for booking a trip to Disney in 2025 through KMV Travel. Simply fill out the form at kmvtravel.com/Skyway and make sure that you select Imagination Skyway under the How Did You Hear About Us question to be eligible for a special gift from the team. Terms and conditions apply. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Thank you for joining me aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.